Hey everyone, welcome back to Finance Unplugged. Today we're joined by Rhea Colaso, founder of Planicorn and a fractional ESG officer working with venture capital funds. She helps investors evaluate startups beyond financial returns, focusing on sustainability, governance, and long-term impact. Her work reflects a growing shift in finance towards responsible and impact-driven investing. Rhea, it's so great to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here as well.
Before we get into what you have to share, I want to get into your background first, right? So you've
Mhm.
built a career at the crossroads of finance, sustainability, and regulation, which is an unusual place to land. Was ESG intentional, or did you find your way into it?
I think I really found my way into it. And actually, if you speak to most sustainability professionals, they didn't study this initially. This is something that they added on to their career as an upskill. So my background is in economics and advertising, and I have worked predominantly with a lot of like branding companies in India specifically. And then afterwards, I pivoted to fixed income, which is more like bonds. After that, I realized that there's a bigger scope in sustainability. And then I started working for VC firms because, like with a bond, it's usually just one big company who has everything together. But I realized early stage companies need more assistance, and you can work on more challenging companies because it's already in the starting phases. So it's easier to seed in these ideas than coming in when the company has 40 employees.
I love that answer. It's always so nice listening to somebody's path into finance, into what they're doing. The next question I have for you is about what you're currently doing. On your profile, I saw that you are a fractional ESG officer. What does that
Mhm.
actually mean, and what does your job include day to day?
That's a very interesting question because it changes day to day. Essentially, my biggest role is to make sure that the VC funds are compliant with the EU regulation, which is known as the SFDR. That's point one. The second thing I have to do is when VCs take money from their investors, so that could be like a bank or family offices, etc. They're also given certain ESG related KPIs or requests that they have to fulfill every year. So these are all like more on the regulatory basis that I have to complete for them. Then on the other hand, I have to ensure like I do a due diligence for their startups. So that's making sure that like okay, on a lesser end it's about environment, but on other aspects it's about governance, it's about how are they handling their employees, because that's more pertinent to like an early stage company than let's say their carbon footprint. So that's also important. So it's really guiding them because these words like ESG, SFDR, TCFD, they're all like just alphabets to a lot of early stage companies that are trying to navigate making revenue in their product. So I try to take that burden away from them and make sure that I can create like frameworks or policies on their behalf, like obviously incorporating the C level and implementing it at the employee level.
You mentioned SFDR somewhere in the middle. I'd
Mhm.
really like if you can dive deeper into that. What exactly does it
Mhm.
mean, and what does it require for VC funds to do?
Mhm. So SFDR is it's also known as a Sustainable Financial Disclosure Regulation, essentially. So when a fund decides to start raising for its money, essentially you have to classify yourself as Article 6, which means that you're a general fund. You're not taking into account like any ESG characteristics or anything. Then you have an Article 8 fund, Article 9 fund. So it depends on like what you're classifying yourself as. Like, do you have a sustainable objective? Are you just taking some environmental or social characteristics into account? So this is essentially what you're promising your investors that they will be investing into. So that's why yearly you have to prove that you are complying with what you had set out in the first place. Because later on, if you find out that, hey, you said that you are going to have a sustainable objective, and then plot twist, you're sitting and investing in fossil fuel driven companies or controversial weapons, then that's a problem. Also at the same time, you cannot say that, hey, I will just not invest in these three four things, I will actually do something good. And you have to prove year on year that the companies that you're investing in are doing something good, right? So all these different factors are looked as under the SFDR.
Right, right. Without naming anything like confidential,
Mhm.
can you maybe walk us through one company that thought that they had hands on a jackpot almost, but then they figured out that this particular company, this startup, is not sustainable and it does not adhere to the principles?
I mean, it really depends on, there's so many issues. Like it could be something as small as like co-founders not getting along. That's, I think, one of the biggest reasons that companies like actually don't succeed. I mean, one example is a little hard, but I think toxic work culture is definitely the like a really big reason. And over time, you can find out such things through looking at KPIs. So if you see how many people are taking sick leaves, okay, if people are not taking even the average amount of sick leaves as they should, then you realize that they're all going to burn out, right? Because they're not taking any time for themselves. Therefore, how can they really contribute to this product any further, right? Like there's diminishing marginal utility in employees themselves. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is people are taking too many leaves. Okay, so then you start to see a spike in how many vacations someone is taking or sick leave. For example, with one company, we noted that all the women who quit before had all taken sick leaves like at a huge level. So we realized that there's something happening to the women co-workers over there, and we realized that the co-founder was being really toxic and towards the women, and therefore they had to all like leave the company. Now that's a very big issue. Like one is reputational harm, two is training people over and over again, three, it affects your revenue, and it affects your like everything, essentially. You can even have a lawsuit which could have like more risks. So ESG is far more, that's why I keep saying, than more like than just sustainability or recycling paper. Like you have to look at so many elements, and different metrics can help you like analyze a company, and that's other than just the non-financial metrics, essentially.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned one of the KPIs. Can you touch on some other
Mhm.
KPIs, some PAIs,
Mhm.
reporting frameworks, things like that that you use on a daily?
Yeah, so there's a difference. So one I have is like the PAIs, which are your principal adverse impacts. So that's like that's mandatory for anyone who's classified as an Article 9 fund. Let's say you said, I'm going to do something good. That's fine. You said you want to invest in women. That's a great like object. But at the same time, you need to make sure that just because you're investing in women doesn't mean that they can still be like in like doing activities in fossil fuels or controversial weapons, etc. So that's what a buy is. I also, on top of this, usually come out with like custom metrics because each company is slightly different. They might come for different regulations. If you're doing a factory, it's far different than B2B SaaS. So I come up with different like things to look at that as well. So hypothetically, if you're looking at I think the other day we were looking at board gender. There's also, again, like more gender specific. It's like how many women are on the founder level, at least, that you have invested in. And this is a fund that is like mostly in the software space. So this is not really like a fund focused on investing in women. It's focused on B2B SaaS. And then we found that they actually had zero women in their entire portfolio, even though they had invested in almost like 40 companies. So it was like interesting to know like why. Like, and if you see like more women in like just femtech or more female health, or like it's very specific to female related problems. But at the same time, like half this planet has women. So it's like, how come no women in this portfolio were able to come up with a B2B SaaS product? So was
Mm.
there a problem in the deal flow? Like were they just like not enough women in this field itself, because there are realistically less women into STEM and less who would even like start a company. So it's really like looking at the entire landscape more wholly to understand why they had such a, okay, they had no number. So it wasn't even like a low number. So yeah, that was one KPI, for example.
Right. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, say a VC fund finds about 10 to 12 companies that they want to invest in. Where do you
Mhm.
want for these funds to include ESG? Like, do they start looking at ESG from the very beginning when they're screening these startups, or does it come in later?
It depends on the fund,
Oh,
100%. Like we
context
have a
dependent.
discussion when the fund is actually created. Yeah. So first it depends, okay, what is your classification? Two, are you interested in investing in climate tech? Are you interested in looking at all these ESG metrics at different stages of the company? Are you just interested for annual reporting? Like what is your objective? So based on the fund's objective, I come up with something called a responsible investment policy, which explains at what levels will we look at ESG. So I have some companies that are not article 9, but they're Article 8, so they have lesser requirements. But they do far more like due diligence on the ESG level because it's important, right? Like, for example, they invest in a lot of factories. So they really look at like, have they thought about the water risks? Have they thought about the energy risks? Because let's say you're investing in AI data centers and you put it in a desert, where are you going to get the water to actually cool the systems? And if someone hasn't thought about such a small issue, which they consider small, it's a very big issue actually, right? So it really depends on what the investment is, how involved the investors want to be. And also, one distinction is you have two types of investors. You have the lead investor, which is definitely going to invest a lot more. They're going to lead the due diligence. They're also going to get a lot more responses from the company. Oftentimes, you will invest in a company and you will not hear back from the company at all. So you can only pray for that annual number, much less like, more like monthly numbers or something. So there's so many aspects that you have to go through. Um, and then figure out. But realistically, you should be doing it at due diligence. You should be understanding the founder's mindset. Do they even know like about climate policies? Do they know about like how the environment that they're creating their system in is going to happen? Third, do they understand their supply chain? One of the biggest issues I do face is discussions about supply chain, because people think, okay, I'm B2B SaaS, my supply chain is this small. But no, you have vendors. Vendors are vendors, and everyone is affected. Where do you get your energy from? Like all these aspects like have a cascading effect on the company, and of course their profit. So usually I try to convince them through the profit angle and their cost angle, so it's more interesting to
Right.
them.
This paves the way for another question that I have for you. You mentioned DDQs
Uh-huh.
somewhere in the middle. Sorry if I'm going back and forth, but how
Mhm.
should like a VC
You
fund,
know,
how should a team approach DDQs so that it does not completely consume them?
first, there are different aspects to the DDQ, right? Like you have your basic, which is please show me your financial projections. You have the second, which is your KYB, KYC. Like, are you a legitimate company? Do you have you even been registered? Are you a real person? Do you have an Aadhaar card? Like, all these little elements, which are still also part of governance at the same time. You don't want to be investing into someone who's on a sanctions list. So that's a basic search. The third will be your discussion with your founders. So you understand their mindset, their vision. Are you looking to like, is it a pump and dump? Like you want to exit soon? What is your plan? And then fourth would be these discussions about ESG, which are like, hey, but it depends how you approach it. Oftentimes we don't say that this is an ESG due diligence. We just tell them it's like part of the conversation just to understand their mindset, because at this stage, like honestly, it is not realistic that they will have most of these things in place. But the idea is that in the next like 3 to 4 years as they're growing, you start to build it. So it's like building as a healthy company that won't just explode one day but like will sustainably grow over time. So it really depends again on the client as well.
Right. Given everything that you've laid out today, I have one career-oriented question for you. I'm sure there will be people listening who want to do almost the same thing that you're doing now. So, for the
Mhm.
18, 19, 20-year-old who wants to break into this field, wants to do something like you, what advice would you have? What do you think actually matters?
In my very honest opinion, I wouldn't start off by saying like like just jump straight into like VC, jump into like sustainability. Like it really comes from understanding how businesses work. It comes from understanding why startups fail. I have been part of so many startups that have exploded, hence I can see all the warning signs. Therefore I created a risk model based on like a lot of my personal experiences, or based on my conversations like with other people in this like industry, and why companies fail essentially, so you can see the markers. So definitely like experience like working operationally at a company, because a lot of times people come from straight from academics with really great ideas but they're not operational, because you're dealing with a two-person company sitting in like some co-working space. They don't have the capacity, so you're supposed to do a lot of their job. But if you don't understand their business, because one day you can be dealing with scientists who are inventing the alternative for vanilla bean to like I've dealt with clients who are finding AI grid systems to improve like the renewable energy network, etc. So you can literally be doing anything. So you should be able to like jump like a jeera out of a pan, in essentially, like. But if you don't have the capacity to like learn really fast, see all this fast, then it's really hard, right? And my experience in like the agency life, working for like 5 6 clients at the same time, delivery date is the next day for all of them, like that helped me to like do this job today. But had I not done that, like this would not be possible, because you have to research literally all the time and really fast. And you have to know things like law, you need to know things like strategy, business, finance, economics, like biology. So you need to really like experience the world, I would say.
Right. Do you do a lot of learning on a daily just to know about all of these
Mhm.
fields?
100%. Like some I learn from just the job, like based on like what the task of the day is. But majority of it is because I have to know the regulation before the client does, or their companies do. So I have to like learn a lot before and then convert it for like into presentations for them or something. So that is mostly the law aspect. Business economics, like listening to podcasts really help, because they always talk, especially about Dario CEO and stuff. You understand, okay, that company failed because of these reasons, and then you can add it back into your risk model or like your due diligence. Even Shark Tank really helps me, right? Like, so all these like experiences really can add. And you keep watching, like, oh, this company succeeded because of XYZ, now I should look for that. This company failed, but they pivoted. How did they pivot? And reading books helps, right? Like on the book about like Nike, the book about Samsung, like so many books can help you like just study how businesses work. That's like the biggest learning I have.
Right.
Just keep studying.
Right. Uh, I just have only one last question for you. This
Mhm.
is more reflective and it is
Mhm.
kind of unrelated to what we've been talking about. But what is the best piece of advice that you've been given so far, Been, and how would you relate it to the takeaway, the one key takeaway you would want the listeners to take from this episode?
Mhm. Maybe it's not like something someone told me, but I was watching the episode of Silicon Valley. I don't know if you've seen this show. It's one of my favorite shows. But this is before I got into finance, okay? And he was talking about, he was eating Burger King every day in the show. This one like VC guy, yeah, VC guy. He's eating the Burger King. He then notices the sesame seeds, and he realizes like, hey, every burger coming out of Burger King, and therefore all the other burger chains, have so much sesame seeds on them. And then he realizes that in this island, that sesame seeds only grow in like some microclimate. And there are actually this locust or cicadas or some type of insect coming, because the earth is warming, therefore they're reproducing a lot more, and they're going to eat all the crop. So simultaneously he goes and invests into a different like sesame plant, I think. And when the cicadas come, or the insects, they eat all the crop, the price increases, and then he sells his sesame seeds from the other thing. I think like that's the best like explanation of why you should take ESG or like learn ESG seriously, because it really helps you understand like the impact of the smallest element on the next thing, on the next thing, and then how it impacts you.